Alright, the confusing world of lipoproteins, of which there are two to remember. There are actually more than this, but it's been simplified, as it often is. High density lipoproteins are sometimes known as good lipoproteins, and low density lipoproteins sometimes known as bad lipoproteins. Why good and bad? It's to do with the way that they deposit cholesterol. They both carry cholesterol around. The difference really is structural, that high density lipoproteins made from unsaturated fats, protein, cholesterol, low density saturated fats, protein, cholesterol. Remember, unsaturated fats would associate with plant-based things, oils and lipids from plants. Saturated fats we particularly associate with animal fats. If you can't quite remember which way around it is, the trick, if you like, for it, high density, think of things being high, heaven is high, if you like, it's up in the clouds, that's the good bit. Low down is hell, L for low, that's the bad ones. Now you might be thinking, what's the point of this, having these things, depositing cholesterol all around your body? Remember, cholesterol is essential for cell membranes. It regulates the fluidity, keeps the mosaic model nice and fluid, while not being so fluid that everything just falls apart. So cholesterol is important. Now generally speaking, if it's inside of a cell, you're fine. So let's say this is a liver cell. Cholesterol can be stored quite happily in the liver. The key to it is receptors. Remember that a receptor is a protein, some kind of protein on the surface or in the membrane with a specific shape. So on the liver cells you would have a receptor, I should use the same colour, shouldn't I? HDLs, that would be specific to that. So cholesterol can be safely deposited down in the liver. Now you also have on your other cells, so this could just be a cell in your body, they have receptors for the low density lipoprotein. And to be honest, the cholesterol can be dumped off in there. And again, it's fine. Cells need low density lipoprotein. Cells need cholesterol. They can actually synthesize cholesterol in here. It's needed for the membrane. So as long as it's in there, it's not too much of a problem. When they do tests for cholesterol, medical tests, basically what they would do is test for these. They would test for low density lipoproteins. That's what they're actually looking for. A high proportion of that in your blood, it tends to be an indicator of a potential problem, potential problem for heart attacks and so on. Now, what happens is when these two get out of balance, that's when you can particularly have problems. So one of the things that saturated fats do, or we think this is one of the ways it works, saturated fats decrease the activity of these receptors. Cells can actually build these receptors and stick them on the surface, so if it needed more cholesterol, it would build more receptors. And the saturated fats in some way seem to stop these receptors being built or placed on the surface, and the low density lipoproteins end up just dumping their cholesterol in places where you don't really want it, and particularly in the walls of the arteries. That's where it's a particular problem. Polyunsaturated fats, which are things like you would find in sunflower oil, olive oils and things, I think it's polyunsaturated, they increase the activity of those receptors. So you get more of them on the surface, perhaps, and more of the cholesterol is dumped into a place where it can be used, and it's not a problem. And monounsaturated fats, which would be a saturated fat with just one double bond, if you like, also seem to have a beneficial effect in reducing the levels of LDLs. Now, there's one more thing to say on this. There's a drug you may have heard of called statins. It's a bit of a hot issue at the moment, statins, a bit controversial. These are chemicals, and what they do is when the cholesterol's in here, there's an enzyme involved, and statins basically inhibit this enzyme, and the cholesterol can't be synthesized properly. So as far as the cell is concerned, it's not getting as much cholesterol as it thinks it should be getting. And so what it does is it puts more of these receptors on the surface, which means more of this low density lipoprotein arrives and dumps this cholesterol in here. And it seems to be quite effective for some people in some cases at reducing the risk of heart attack, or is given to people who have had history of heart disease or have had heart attacks, and it helps to reduce this cholesterol. When you see some of these spreads and things on in supermarkets, and it says things like, you know, reduces cholesterol and so on, yeah, potentially it probably does. It's, you know, this polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fat. You know, don't get the idea that just by eating a bit of spread on your toast that somehow you'll be completely safe from heart disease. No, it's not that straightforward, not that simple. But the principle is there. We want to reduce the low-density lipoproteins while increasing the proportion of high-density lipoproteins. And I should just say another thing for lipoproteins, they're also important in the immune system. They have a role in protecting you against bacteria in some of the cell responses. So they are actually important, they are useful. You might just think, what on earth is the point of the low-density lipoproteins? There is a function to them. It's just that you know, when we evolved these the various pathways and things, we didn't have access to anywhere near as much saturated fat as we do now, and the system just basically gets overloaded and leads to atheromas and atherosclerosis, which I will deal with in another video.